Okay, so it's now time for us to begin writing our persuasive speech. I'm going to run through a couple of things that I really want you to know before you start writing, some things that I think are going to help you, and there are some things as well that I would like for you to include in your speech. So please make sure that you're paying attention as you watch the video. If you take notes as you watch, I think that would be really helpful as well. So we'll get started. So you guys have already had a look at audience, purpose, and context. Now that you know who your audience is going to be, what your purpose is, and what the context of your speech is, we can start writing and start thinking about the kind of persuasive techniques that you can use in order to persuade your audience. So firstly, I just want to talk about belief in your opinion. So it's really important that you have presented an argument that you really believe in. Your sense of conviction is extremely important when giving a persuasive speech. Try your best not to be wishy-washy about your opinion. Avoid saying things like, well, it might be better if we do it this way, or it could be good if people agreed with this. You need to be confident in your opinion. Now, that might sound a bit silly, but it's usually in our nature to not be too direct or not to be too abrupt to people. But when you're giving a persuasive speech, it's important. Cut out all of those in-between words like maybe or could be, might be. Those things don't belong in a persuasive speech. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the kind of persuasive techniques that you can include within your speech in order to make it more persuasive. Now, this is a few persuasive techniques that I would encourage you to use, but if you know of others, or if you can already think of a speech forming in your mind that has persuasive techniques that you think would be really effective, go for it. If you're unsure about how to use persuasive techniques, please make sure that you ask in class so I can help you out. So the first persuasive technique that I wanted to cover is repetition. We've talked about repetition before, which is the act of repeating a particular phrase or a particular word in order to get it to stick in your audience or reader's mind if you're writing an essay. So in a persuasive speech, repetition is really effective because with a speech, your audience can't go back. They can't rewind what you've said. So if there's a particular phrase that you really want them to remember, feel free to repeat it a few times. Now, you don't want to do this in an annoying way. You want to make sure you're doing it in a way that captures your audience's attention. You may repeat it at the beginning, middle, and end of your speech. You might say it a couple of times in a row and pause for effect so that they know that it's an important phrase. It's really important that you focus on having a logical structure for the content of your speech. Now, we'll cover this a little bit more in class, but this is why editing your speech is really important. If you allow yourself time before you give your speech to actually edit and make it better, then making sure that your repetition has an impact on your audience is a lot easier. So the next persuasive technique that I wanted to talk to you about is strong adjectives. Now, we've talked about this a little bit in class, but strong adjectives in a speech can be really effective because it will help audiences to know how you want them to feel about particular aspects of your topic. So for instance, if you're describing something as bad, well, bad doesn't have really that much impact. It's a pretty ordinary day-to-day adjective that we use. But if you use a word like terrible, then they'll know, your audience will definitely know that you want them to feel badly towards that particular aspect of the issue. If you were using the word, say, good, again, it's a very normal word to use. If you wanted your audience to know that what you were talking about was particularly good or very, very good, instead of saying very, very good, use a strong adjective. Superb, great, fantastic. So strong adjectives give you a chance as well to change your tone of voice. It can be really impactful to use your tone of voice to put emphasis on particular words. Next up is evidence. Now, when you were writing your persuasive essays, I talked quite a bit about how important it was to provide evidence for the ideas that you were presenting. If you don't have evidence to back up your claims or back up your ideas, why would anyone believe you? It's important within a speech to give evidence, and this can come in different forms. So just like when you were writing your essay, you could include evidence in the form of facts, in the form of professional opinions, so opinions of people that know what they're talking about, particularly if they work in the field that you're discussing. So, for instance, if you chose a topic on using phones in schools, perhaps you could use the opinion of a principal or maybe the opinion of a student because a student is impacted by that particular issue. If you are using a statistic, for instance, you might want to make sure that you have a visual image behind you so that you can actually explain what those statistics mean. A visual image will help your audience to understand the importance of those statistics, and it may actually help them to understand the statistics as a whole anyway. I know that when I look at statistics, I understand it a lot better than just hearing it spoken out loud. So next, emotional appeal. Now, your speech can be very effective if you help your audience to feel a particular emotion in regards to the issue you're talking about. That emotion might be sad if someone's not being treated right, or a sense of injustice. The emotion might be indignant, or shocked if they're not aware of the thing that you're discussing. So if you're telling them something that they might not be aware of, they might be shocked at that. It might be that they feel happy if you're presenting a good piece of news or a solution to a problem. So emotional appeal can be very effective. You're helping the audience to feel the emotions that you want them to feel in regards to the particular topic you're talking about. Next up, we've got anecdotes. Now, I think anecdotes are really effective in persuasive speeches. An anecdote is a story. It's usually a personal story, so a story of something that occurred to you. It may also be a story of someone that you know. And what an anecdote does is it helps your audience to understand that you know what you're talking about. You've had an experience in this particular area. So it can help your audience to understand where you're coming from and why you're talking about this topic, why it is something that you are passionate about. Okay? Anecdotes, I think, are really effective, and I'd love for you to include one in your persuasive speech. And lastly, we have inclusive language. Now, when I talk about inclusive language, I'm talking about words like we, our, or us. Now, these kinds of words include the audience within your opinion. So if you're saying, we cannot stand by and see this happen anymore, then that gives the audience the impression that they're on the so they're on the speaker's side, so they're on your side in this particular debate. If they said something like, it's our school community and we need to care for it, those kind of words will help the audience to feel like they are already agreeing with you. Inclusive language can be really effective in this way. So next, I just want to talk about your audience. Once you know what kind of persuasive techniques you want to use, it's important that they're catered to your particular audience. Your persuasive techniques are only going to be effective if you're thinking about who your audience is. For instance, if you were trying to convince your grandparents that the government should pay for every single person to be given a smartphone so they can stay connected with Instagram and Snapchat, your grandparents are probably not going to agree with you unless they happen to be very, very cool social media influencers. But to be honest, most grandparents don't even know what Instagram and Snapchat is, let alone use it. However, if you were to explain to your grandparents that smartphones can help people stay connected to loved ones, as well as help people organize their day-to-day appointments, this might make them agree with you because you're presenting arguments that are relevant to your specific audience. So I want you to have a really good think about who your audience is and how you can cater your speech, particularly for them. Okay, guys, so I hope this has been helpful for you. I want you to start writing your persuasive speech. And if you come across anything you're unsure about, remember, you can always refer back to this video and you can always ask for help from your peers or from your teacher.